Okay, so BEDMAS is one of those things, again, that you should be familiar with from middle school. We're going to review the BEDMAS rules. We're going to do a bunch of practice questions, but you're going to notice that some of the questions I've given you on the back of the sheet are challenging. So I'm going to teach you a couple of methods or give you some helpful hints to make that question a little easier. As a reminder, what does BEDMAS stand for? I know it says O. I couldn't find, I just like this image a lot because it was colorful. But really the O we consider to be an E and we call it exponents. Either way it works. So the B stands for brackets. The E stands for exponents, or another way to think about it is orders, which is what they have on the sheet. D is division, M is multiplication, A addition, S is subtraction. And the one rule that you guys should be familiar with, because as you do the back of the sheet, it does come into play a lot, is that these two and these two have a very special rule, and it is called first come, first serve. And what this means is when you are solving a question, if you see a multiplication sign before a division sign, you solve the multiplication before you get to the division. So multiplication and division, you just do them in whichever order they occur in, and the same with addition and subtraction. And we're going to do a couple of questions that have that special rule. Again, just a reminder, no calculators. Let's challenge ourselves. You can always have your multiplication sheet out. And by now you've hopefully noticed I always give pretty small numbers, nothing major. So it's not super intimidating or anything like that. So you can see by this, we're going to start with two simpler examples before we get to the more complicated ones. First of all, if I were to rewrite this question, I would ask you what sign is between the 2 and the bracket? It's a multiplication. I think that was Shams. It was a multiplication sign. So it's going to be 6 divided by 2 times bracket 10 plus 5. You don't have to write it like this. I just choose to so you can clearly see what is happening. According to BEDMAS, what is the first step that we're going to take? What is the first thing we're going to solve? Oscar? Oh, say that again. Yep, I thought I heard that and then I wasn't quite sure. You're going to solve the brackets, which is going to be 10 plus 5. So you guys, here's how I do these questions. I do them in order and I don't show any rough work in the question. So I don't want you to write 10 plus 5 is 15. No, either do that on a rough sheet of paper or just do it in your head. So I'm going to solve this. 10 plus 5 is 15. It's going to be 6 divided by 2 times 15. So all I did was I solved the brackets and I wrote them and I kept them in brackets. You don't have to keep them in brackets. Once you get a single answer, you can remove the brackets. I think you're just going to notice something about me is I love brackets. I just like to keep them around. Yep. Yes. And let me see what handout D is. Nope, just question number 1. That's all you're going to do. So that homework for decimals is just handout D, question number 1, review decimals, review long division, review long multiplication. All right, let's keep going. Now we have a division sign and a multiplication sign. Which sign do we do first? Javen? Yeah, it's whatever comes first. So in this case, the division is first. So now our next step is going to be 6 divided by 2. What is 6 divided by 2? Abrar? Good, it's going to be 3 times 15. You can either long multiply or do it in your head or check your multiplication sheet. What's 3 times 15? Abrami? It's going to be 45 as our final answer. How did we feel about that example? Straightforward? Good? Excellent. I'm not going to scroll it over all the way. So if you're still writing, you can still look at it. I'm going to go over to question number 2. In this question, actually, I would say question 2 is probably easier than question 1 because there are no brackets or anything like that. Just so that we can see what we have going on here, I am going to go ahead and just highlight our signs. We have a multiplication, a division, and a multiplication. Which one of these are we going to do first? Abrami? Yeah, you have to do them in the order that they occur. So you're going to have to do the multiplication first, which is going to be 6 times 3. And that is 18 divided by 9 times 2. I know some of you guys may be very tempted to multiply these, and then divide. But fight that urge. Don't do it. train your brain to recognize that even though the multiplications are grouped so nicely together and you want to multiply them, they're not supposed to be. You have to do the multiplication first. And now next, you're going to do the 2 division questions. So it's going to be 18 divided by 9, which is good. So it's going to be 2 times 2. And then the final answer is just going to be a whole number 4. For those of you that worked ahead, how many? I purposely made this question super complicated. I added a whole bunch of ones and a whole bunch of brackets. And I understand it looks very, very confusing. Let's just break down what is happening in this question. So 1 bracket -1. These 2 numbers are going to be multiplied together. So I know that these 2 are going to be multiplied. Then I have minus -1. This is an addition or subtraction of integers. So I know that there is a couple of illegal signs over here, which I'm going to eventually have to clean up. I'm going to go with a blue theme for this question. So I know I have to clean up those 2 negative signs. Then I have a plus sign and I have a whole bracket over here. I know I'm going to need to solve what's inside this bracket. And actually, this entire term is inside the bracket. So I'm going to also clean up these signs and then solve this. You guys, I like to think of BEDMAS as peeling away onion, like onion peels. You want to start with the innermost bracket and then work your way out. So for me, when I look at this question, I notice the innermost, this entire term right here is in brackets, and the innermost bracket is this one over here. So let's go ahead and start solving. If you would like, you can start, because these guys are not in brackets, you can go ahead and clean them up a little bit. 1 times -1 is going to give me -1 minus -1. So 2 negative signs are going to give me +1. So far we have finished solving this and we have finished solving this. And we were allowed to solve those because they're not in brackets. So it's totally fine. You can clean up, multiply, do whatever you need to do to solve those answers. Okay, now we're going to figure out what is in the bracket. So I'm going to keep these in the big brackets with the plus sign in front. And I'm going to go ahead and solve this in here. So I'm going to do this very, very slowly. There's a rounded bracket, 1 minus. So I kept this here. I kept this here. What's 1 plus 1? Just going to be a 2. And then 2 negatives are going to give me a +1. And just in case you're a visual learner, I'm going to just show you with my arrows what's happening. So these 2 cleaned up and gave me this. This sign cleaned up and gave me this term. I kept the plus here. This 1 stays where it is. This minus stays where it is. I added these 2 numbers together, and then I cleaned up these 2 signs to give me this. So just pause for a second and take a look at this and see if it makes sense to you. All right, so what am I going to do next? Well, I still have this bracket to deal with. So I am going to keep the -1 there. I'm going to keep the +1 there. I'm going to keep the plus sign there. I'm going to go ahead and solve everything inside this bracket. What is 1 take away 2? Yep, -1. So now inside this bracket, this will clean up to be -1 plus 1. So again, visually, we just solved this and we got this as our answer. And now I'm going to finish up solving that bracket. So it's going to be -1 plus 1. What's -1 plus 1? Jen? Just a 0. And then what's our final answer going to be when we put all of this together? What do you guys think? Jen? It's just going to be a 0. Because -1 plus 1 is going to be a 0. So our last example has fractions this time. And what have I included in the fractions? So let's just look at this and break it down. We have these fractions are in brackets. Then we have a multiplication sign. And we have a square. And then we have a division sign. And then we have this. So lots going on. But BEDMAS tells us that we should probably start by solving what's inside of this bracket here. How can I solve what's inside of this bracket? Well, I'm going to make it a common denominator by multiplying this by 2 and multiplying this by 2. So that's going to be step number 1. And I think I want. All right, so it's going to be -5/6 plus 4/6. That is what's going to be inside this bracket. And then at the same time, I can go ahead and square this. I know we haven't done powers, you guys, but does anyone remember what -3/2 squared would mean? Abrami? 9 over. Yeah, it's kind of like saying -3/2 times -3/2. So -3 times -3 is 9, and then 2 times 2 is 4. And that's the most amount of powers you're going to need to know for this unit. I mean, for this lesson, that's it. Because I understand we haven't learned powers properly yet. And then you guys, what can I do for this division sign in the 27/6? How do we get rid of division and fractions? What do we do? Farabi? Yeah, you change it from a division to a multiplication, and then you take the reciprocal. All right, and now this question is kind of like what you're used to seeing. I'm going to add what's inside the bracket. -5 plus 4 is going to be -1/6 times 9/4 times 6/27. And by the way, you guys did really well on the fractions quiz with. Nope, because -3 times -3 is +9. Yeah, and you guys did a really good job on that fractions quiz for cross reducing. I was very impressed. So I know you guys are pretty familiar with this. How am I going to cross reduce these? You guys see a matching pair or a pair of numbers? Okay, go ahead, Shams. Which one? Okay, go. Yep, that's good. Let's go 6 divided by 6 and then 6 divided by 6. What else is a pair of numbers? Ari? Yep, we can divide this by 9. We can divide this by 9. So when we do this, what do we end up with? We're going to get 6 divided by 6 is 1, 9 divided by 9 is 1, 6 divided by 6 is 1, 27 divided by 9 is 3. So it's very beautiful. It works out really nicely. I'm going to rewrite the numbers. So it's going to be -1/1 times 1/4 times 1/3. And nothing else can be cross reduced. So our final answer is just going to be -1/12. Did you guys get this as your answer? Excellent. Okay.